Welcome to HF Ball, where I'm going to be going through my underrated 11 for this season of the Premier League. In most people's underrated teams, there's a lot of players from clubs that have overperformed expectations this year, such as Brighton and Newcastle, so in order to make this a bit broader, I'm going to limit myself to one player from each team. So let's get into this. In goals, I'm going with Chelsea's goalkeeper Kepa Arrizabalaga. Since his arrival in the summer of 2018 for a record fee for a keeper, Kepa has faced extreme scrutiny from the media, some of which for good reasons as he's failed to make fairly routine saves. In the 1920 season, Kepa had a woeful save percentage of 54.5%, easily the worst in the league, and a post-shot XG of 11.5, meaning Chelsea conceded 11 goals fewer than what they should have. Kepa was eventually benched by Lampard for Senegalese number 1 Edouard Mendy. However, this season he's managed to wrestle the number 1 back from Mendy as Chelsea look to move forward with a ball-playing goalkeeper. New life seems to be bred into Kepa with a save percentage of 74.5% and a post-shot XG of 3.7, only bettered by Alisson, Bernd Leno and David Raya. Kepa hasn't finished the season overly strong, however what we've seen this season is some welcome consistency from the 28-year-old. Although he still has the occasional error and hasn't lived up to the 72 million price tag that they initially gave to Athletic Bilbao, this season has been a pleasant redemption for Kepa, a bright spot in a season to forget for Chelsea fans. Much of the talk around the Emirates last season came from the superb performances of right-back Takehiro Tomiyasu, so it was quite surprising that the arrival of Ligue 1 Young Player of the Season William Saliba led to Tomiyasu being dropped and centre-back Ben White being pushed out wide. White certainly gets the least plaudits from the Arsenal backline, however he plays a crucial role in the defensive unit. Many teams that operate with a flat back four will attempt to push the more attacking-minded fullback further up, and the defensive one tucks into form a 3 with the 2 centre-backs. White tucking in allows a more attack-minded Zinchenko to overlap or drift into midfield and have more influence in the game. White is more comfortable with the ball at his feet than Tomiyasu, and although he may not have his stature, he offers more stability against the aggressive press that some of these Premier League sides play. This is seen in White completing 66 passes on average per game, with over 7 of them being progressive passes. This ranks him second in the Arsenal squad for both metrics. Now 25, he's starting to come into his prime and will be a key part of Arsenal's push for silverware over the next few years. I felt a member of the Fulham team just had to make this 11 for their performances so far this year. It probably should be Bernd Leno for the ridiculous season that he's had, but I think the American centre-back Tim Ream deserves his plaudits. Many pundits called for Ream to go when Fulham came up, opting for new signing Issa Diop to slip beside centre-back Tosin Adarabioyo, who impressed the first time in the top division the season prior. Having started every game, Ream is a stalwart of the back line that aren't afraid to press the opposing front line, an aggressive approach from manager Marco Silva. Although Bernd Leno is having a stellar season since he came in, the performances of this defensive unit shouldn't be underestimated as a whole. Ream himself may be a rogue shout, but when I've seen him play, he's impressed me with his ball playing ability and defensive positioning, which earns him a place in my underrated 11. Alongside Ream, I'm going to go with James Tarkowski. I don't think it's controversial to say that Frank Lampard has struggled to perfect his backline in the past. However, taking James Tarkowski from Burnley in the summer certainly didn't worsen Everton's. Definitely the most impressive defender under Lampard this season, and now with the arrival of former manager Sean Dyche, Tarkowski is looking like he did 4 years ago when he was a shoo-in for the England World Cup squad. An old school centre-back, perfect for the Dyche backline, Tarkowski puts up 2.5 blocks, 5 clearances and 3 aerials won per game, ranking him amongst the top 5% of centre-backs in Europe's top 5 leagues for those metrics. Although they've had an awful season, I believe there's a lot of talent in the Southampton squad, especially within the midfield and the defence. James Ward-Prowse, Armel Bella-Kotchap and Carlos Alcaraz, just to name a few. However, a player I think that's been underrated for a number of seasons now has been versatile fullback Kyle Walker-Peters. Traditionally a right back, but often operating as a left back when playing with Tino Livramento, Walker-Peters has been one of the main attacking outlets in the Southampton side that has struggled for goals. Completing 3.36 progressive carries and 1.6 successful take-ons per game, confident with the ball at his feet and with the pace to beat the man on the outside, I can see him being picked up at a cup price by a mid to low end Premier League side this summer. Brighton, Brentford, Fulham and Burnley could all be potential landing spots for Walker-Peters over the coming months. At Christmas, Wolves were rooted to the foot of the table, 4 points from safety. Since then, Julian Lopetegui has moved Wolves 10 points clear of the drop zone into a comfortable 13th place. One of the signings that's helped solidify this position was defensive midfielder Mario Lemina. Since Lemina's arrival from Nice for €11 million in January, Wolves have picked up 27 points from 19 games, placing them 10th in the form table since the turn of the year. Lemina, who's made way for the ageing João Moutinho, offers the qualities of a traditional six: defensively strong, physically stout, and comfortable distributing the ball within 25 yards. Sitting in front of Kilman and Dawson, this allows the more technically gifted Ruben Neves and Matheus Nunes to contribute more to the attack. Lemina is vital in offering protection to the backline, completing 3 tackles and 1.73 blocks per game, putting him in the top 10% of midfielders for those metrics in Europe's top 5 leagues, and looks to be a key part of Lopetegui's system for the foreseeable future. Definitely an unsung hero within this impressive Newcastle side is Joe Willock, an absolute workhorse in midfield alongside Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes. Willock sits as the right-sided midfield in the 3. Initially playing as more of a 10 under Steve Bruce, since the arrival of Eddie Howe 15 months ago, Willock has profiled more as a centre midfielder, although he still heavily contributes to the attack. The interlink between Guimaraes and the wide players, Willock contributes an outrageous 3.46 progressive carries per 90 and is often seen popping up with late runs into the box, trying to get on the end of a loose ball. His finishing could definitely improve in the final third, but for someone that was thought of as a makeshift centre mid for Eddie Howe, it's very hard to see him being replaced in the next transfer window, after his performances this season that have helped bring Champions League football to Newcastle for the first time since 2003. For the final midfielder, I'm going to go with Morgan Gibbs-White. After a stellar season on loan at Sheffield United, the 23-year-old wanted out of his parent club Wolves. The fee, plastered across the newspapers, certainly turned a few heads at £42.5 million for an attacking midfielder with 1 Premier League goal to his name. Much of this fee, however, is in add-ons that more than likely won't be hit, so its value ranges closer to £30 million. I found it tough to see Forest getting their money's worth for this deal after the acquisition of Jesse Lingard, who plays in the same position. However, 5 goals and 7 assists from Gibbs-White this season has seen him as Forest's top attacking outlet alongside Brennan Johnson, and crucially so, much of those returns have come late on this season. Brilliant displays against Brighton and Southampton by Gibbs-White have helped keep Forest afloat and made that fee look like mere pennies. Since I'm trying to limit this to 1 player per team, it just shows how good Solly March must have been this year to make my 11. The reason I have March in here is because I feel like he's probably the most underappreciated of the front 4. If you heard today that Brighton accepted a bid from a Champions League club, how many players would you think of before you landed on March? McAllister, Matoma, Ferguson, Caicedo and Estupiñán would probably all be ahead of the Eastbourne native March. Under Roberto De Zerbi, March has excelled playing off the right in a 4-2-3-1 formation while notching up 13 goal contributions, the most in his 6 years in the Prem. Brimming with confidence under his new manager, March has put up an impressive 140 shot-creating actions, almost double the 71 he created last season. Shot-creating actions are actions that lead to a shot, such as a pass, a successful take-on, or drawing a foul, and March ranks 5th in the league by that metric this season. A season that has caught everyone off guard from the man that has played as a left wing-back in previous years. If Leicester are relegated to the Championship, I could see them holding on to a lot of their current squad. However, one of the players that will definitely be gone is Harvey Barnes, who has quietly put up 12 goals this season, the most in the Leicester squad. Often overshadowed by the talented James Maddison, Barnes is running slightly hot this season, overperforming his expected goals of 8.6. He has consistently contributed 13 goals and assists in 4 successive seasons now. Seeing that this Leicester side has massively regressed over the past 2 seasons, I really feel like Barnes could flourish in a more established side. Unai Emery has spoken this season about bringing in a dynamic winger, and I think Harvey Barnes fits that bill. Villa have struggled in the flanks this season, with Leon Bailey and Emi Buendia not hitting their expected heights, and with Barnes going into the last 2 years of his deal, Leicester may be willing to let him go for around the £35 million mark. Strikers tend to receive a lot of praise for being amongst the goals, so it's hard to say that one doesn't get enough plaudits, especially an English striker that has broken 20 goals in a season. But I think Ivan Toney should receive more praise than he does, as if it weren't for the recent scandal that he's involved in, I guarantee that he would have been part of the England squad at the World Cup. I think the main factor that separates relegation threatened sides from sides that are quite comfortable in the league is a quality striker, and it's often very tough for 3 to 4 players to return 8 or 9 goals within one team, Brighton aside. Ivan Toney has contributed to 52% of Brentford's goals this season, and you have to imagine that they will seriously struggle in his absence for the first half of next season. Now there should be a degree of other players such as Mbeumo, Visa and Shada picking up the slack, and you can guarantee Brentford will go for a striker in the summer. That said, I cannot see them replacing Toney's production in his absence. Toney is someone who I would classify as a complete striker, a clinical finisher who can hold up the ball and bring runners such as Mbeumo and both fullbacks into play. He's the key component to Brentford's transitional play, and probably the most valuable player to one team in the league. If you've made it this far, comment down below what players I've missed out on, because there's definitely a few that I wanted to get in here but I couldn't. Leave a suggestion for another video. Who knows, I might make it if it's interesting. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in a bit.